Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a totally unexpected connection, one that links the world's greatest composer with the absolute cutting edge of sports medicine. Based on an incredible presentation by Dr. Christophe Delong in Kinexa Formation, we're going to unpack the concept of sensory compensation. Basically, we're looking at the phenomenal ways the human body adapts when a crucial sense is suddenly taken away.
Okay, so we all know Ludwig van Beethoven was a musical genius, right? But the sheer scale of his obstacle, it's honestly hard to wrap your head around. Beethoven composed his absolute masterpiece, the Ninth Symphony, while completely deaf. He literally couldn't hear a single note from the outside world. So what did he do? He relied on the physical vibrations of his instruments, essentially developing this incredibly sharp internal ear to replace the one he had lost.
Facing this totally devastating reality back in 1802, he wrote in his Heiligenstadt Testament, "I will live for you and for art. I will live to accomplish all that I felt desirous of accomplishing." Just, wow. Talk about an unstoppable internal drive stepping up to overcome a massive physical roadblock. Hold on to that idea of an internal substitute because it's the perfect setup for the sports physiology we're about to dive into. So how in the world does a 19th century composer translate to modern sports medicine? Well, it all comes down to a concept called proprioception. In plain terms, this is your sense of your body's exact position and movement in space. For an athlete, proprioception is the motor equivalent of Beethoven's internal ear. It's quite literally how your body hears itself moving without you ever having to look down at your limbs.
Think of it like there are three specific instruments playing in your body's internal orchestra, all working constantly to keep you balanced. First up, you've got the neuromuscular spindles, kind of like your early warning system that detects muscle length and the speed of a stretch. Then, the Golgi tendon organs, which detect muscle tension to protect you from tearing anything. And finally, the joint receptors. These guys detect the exact position and continuous movement of your joints. Together, they're firing off this unbroken stream of signals to your cerebellum to keep your posture right and anticipate any needed corrections.
But what happens when that internal orchestra is suddenly silenced? Well, get ready for a pretty jarring statistic from a landmark 1993 study by researchers Johansson and Scholander. 30 to 70%.
Yep, 30 to 70%. That is the amount of knee joint receptors completely destroyed after an ACL rupture. For an athlete, this is just a devastating reality. Classic rehab? Sure, it can make the surrounding muscles bigger and stronger, but it absolutely cannot bring those destroyed receptors back to life. So the joint is left essentially blind, or, keeping with our metaphor, deaf to its own exact position in space.
Think about what that actually looks like out on the field. A healthy athlete has a rich, functioning proprioceptive system. They effortlessly hear their body and intuitively pre-correct imbalances before anyone even notices them. But an injured athlete? They suffer from what Dr. Delong calls proprioceptive deafness. Because they're cut off from those automatic signals, they have to rely on this highly conscious, incredibly taxing over-control for every single movement.
Basically, the brain tries to process this loss by shifting from System 1 to System 2. Now, System 1 is your fast, automatic, fluid motor processing. It's how you run or jump when you're not even thinking about it. But the injured athlete, lacking that reliable internal feedback, gets completely trapped in System 2. This system is slow, it's conscious, and under the massive pressure of a live game, it is highly prone to errors. I mean, you simply can't consciously think through every single micro-adjustment of your knee while you're in an all-out sprint, right? It makes you slower and way less fluid.
So how on earth do we fix this? Let's bring it right back to Beethoven. Just like the great composer compensated for his deafness by feeling physical vibrations, an injured athlete has to hunt for alternative sensory pathways. If the knee is proprioceptively deaf, the body has to learn to lean on adjacent healthy structures, like the hip or the ankle. It also has to rely way more on vision and the vestibular system in the inner ear just to stay upright and balanced. And this is exactly where Kinexa Formation's innovative three-stage rehabilitation process steps in. Here's how it works. Stage 1, you physically strengthen those adjacent proprioceptive paths. You're basically forcing the hip and ankle to carry the sensory load that the injured knee dropped. Stage 2, you train fine discrimination by practicing on unstable surfaces to rebuild that sharp sensory acuity. And Stage 3, you reconstruct the internal mental representations of movement through highly deliberate practice. Just as Beethoven rebuilt sound purely in his mind, Kinexa uses data to train the brain to map out space entirely without the original hardware. It really brings this whole explainer together into one incredibly powerful truth. Beethoven composed without hearing. Some athletes move without feeling. Kinexa gives back to an injured body the ear it lost. By using deliberate, data-guided steps, Kinexa is able to provide the vital proprioceptive feedback that the body just can't produce on its own anymore. The deaf body literally relearns how to feel its way through space.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer, and a question for you. How can you apply this understanding of proprioceptive awareness to reconstruct and master your own fluid movement? Whether you're bouncing back from a major injury, or you're just looking to optimize your everyday performance, understanding your body's internal ear is the real key to unlocking true automatic fluidity. The human body's ability to compensate is absolutely extraordinary, provided you know exactly how to train it.